Action!
Hi, everyone. I'm Beth Johnson, and with me, as always, is scientist Franck Marchis, and this is the Grudge Report, SETI Institute's science show following the adventures of Star Trek Discovery's latest episode. Spoilers abound, so if you haven't watched the season finale, turn back while you still can. Hey, Franck, how's it going?
I'm good. How are you, Beth?
Pretty good, pretty good. Wow, that was a season ender.
Yeah, I see that he pushed you to be back into the spacecraft and wear the t-shirt.
Yep, I'm a part of the crew. I'm on the bridge, taking back my ship. Okay, even that sounded dorky to me. All right. What do we think of this week, this episode, the season finale? Was that a good ender to the season for you?
Yeah, the first time I saw it, I watched it. In fact, I too many things, and I watched it again the second time, like a few hours before this, and I really liked it. In fact, more than the first time, because so much happened in one show that it's a bit confusing. So the second time, you understand more like where they're going through. There was a lot of small scene, multiple places.
Yeah, it's that culmination. Everything that's been spiraling in happens really quickly. So it felt like a very fast-paced episode. I do not know what's going on with my background. We're just gonna go with it. All right, so
in the spaceship, I can see that there is you on a holodeck, and there is kind of disturbance in the holodeck.
Yeah. My holodeck is not working very well today. I need to figure out why. So okay, I'm sounding really dorky to myself today. All right, so in this episode, and again, I'm going to give that warning one more time. There are spoilers. This is the season finale. So if you haven't watched it, which hopefully anybody watching this video has at this point, we're going to give away a lot of stuff. So we are wrapping up the season. We are bringing together every storyline that ever happened all year, it seems, or all the previous 12 episodes. We're dealing with Osira and the Emerald Chain. We're dealing with the dilithium planet and the burn. We're dealing with just so many things. So we're trying to take back Discovery. We're trying to rescue our crew from a dilithium planet and a ship that is breaking apart. We're just trying to get everything done here. So yeah, it was a lot. Like you said, there was so much going on. I'm not even sure I can recap it easily. Basically, at the end of the day, we take back the ship from Osira. Burnham kills her after a long extended battle, reboots the ship. The crew has managed to survive being locked in a place with no life support, has blown up a nacelle. We will talk to that. Not really blown up the nacelle, blown up the connection to the nacelle. We'll talk about that too. We have Adira has made it down to our dilithium planet in the hopes of helping out and rescuing Hugh and the captain, and we're trying to figure out how to get Su'Kal to face his fears and deal with his reality. And yeah, it's a lot. and I think that's as quickly as I could sum that up. There's some science involved in this show, so let's get to the science. Where do you want to start?
Let's start with the light first thing. At the beginning of the show, when Su'Kal is talking to the Kelpian, who is not a Kelpian for him, he's a human. We have all this moment of doubt and confrontation between these two characters, and Saru mentioned the existence of a dish, a dish made on Kamina called Salunaim or something like that, and mentioned that they could do it together to kind of convince him that he's truly from the planet Kamina and he's truly Kelpian.
Right, because of course he doesn't look Kelpian, he looks human.
Yeah. I kind of like this scene because we mentioned in the previous episode that the food is important in Discovery. We see it from time to time, but it's very kind of westernized. So this time we have an alien food mentioned. We don't really know what it looked like, though.
No.
unfortunately. But we see them eating that and talking about it, talking about the fact that Saru learned how to do it with his father, I think, or something like that. And it's important. It's an important moment in the show because it's kind of a relationship. They're building a relationship around the dish, basically, a relationship based on trust. And I kind of like that because it's really what we do in human society as well.
Mm-hmm.
As you know, we there is a lot around every event, big event, wedding, big parties. There is always a dish, some meals involved, and it's a way for people to kind of gather around, to socialize, and to spend time or to know better each other. And this is what
Right.
happened in this case.
Yeah. So we use food very heavily in all of it. In I think most of the cultures that I've experienced here, everybody uses food in some way to kind of create that bonding experience, that reason for gathering, and sort of it's a better social lubricant than alcohol, I think, because there's a lot more opportunity to experience other cultures with their food, and I've always enjoyed that. So this is really a nice bonding experience to see, is these two saying, look, I know I don't look Kelpian, but I am, and here's how I'm going to show you, and now we can bond over this experience and gain Sukal's trust a little bit more, because it's a very scared young Kelpian.
So what is
So
interesting as well is that an extraterrestrial civilization is also bonding around food. So
right.
maybe one day when we will have a communication with an extraterrestrial civilization, maybe we will exchange messages such as recipes first to explain what we're eating. And maybe one day when we will meet them, we will also have dish with them or cook with them and learn about each other recipes.
Right. And that would be, as long as we can eat each other's food, that would be a great thing to do. Like, that's definitely a good bonding experience. And we've seen that in I can nerd out for a second. We've seen that in Star Trek through, all of the shows, really. It's always kind of been there from original series all the way through. So it's good that we keep this theme going. Yay for recurring themes.
So yeah, that's all for kind of the science on the Dilithium planet. There was not much. So one thing we could talk about now is what happened on the Discovery spacecraft,
Right.
specifically with the crew. So Zara,
Right. So
go ahead.
our the crew has escaped their captivity with the help of this happened last week. They've escaped their captivity with the help of Booker and our now deceased Orion. Anyway, and they are trying to take back their ship, but she has locked them down between several different floors and shut off their life support. So there is no air. They basically have one or two emergency oxygen systems that they're kind of passing around, and things that does not look good. So the air that they have is the air that was already there to begin with, which is going to get rapidly more carbon dioxide filled as they exhale.
Yeah.
So they can only survive for so long, and carbon dioxide will do what to you as you breathe it?
Yes, so carbon dioxide is basically a poison for any species like us, which is living on the planet. We are using oxygen, as you know. But to go back to the way they disengage the life support, it's a very primitive way, and it's basically explained throughout the show. That's why when I watched it the second time, I got it better. What they did is simply open the vents of the level where they are, and the air is leaking out. And this I know that because the Federation is not someone in the Federation noticed that some of the Discovery spacecraft is losing atmosphere. They mentioned
Oh
that.
wow,
Yeah.
yeah, definitely. That took a second rewatch because I didn't. Now
And
that you
then
mention it, yes. Okay.
and then you can also see when Telly talks, you can see her hair is moving, right? There is wind suddenly in this area. Well, it's because wind is basically a displacement, a movement of atmosphere. So since the atmosphere is escaping through vents, what you see is the hair moving because of that. So that was scientifically accurate, and I kind of like
That's
that
good.
because they put together the story and they make sure that it was clear when you look at the show. So so what happened is that the atmosphere is decreasing in pressure. We have one atmosphere on our planet, and the atmosphere, because the atmosphere is escaping, air is basically escaping, so the atmosphere reduce, so the amount of oxygen is reducing as well. We have 20% oxygen on our planet, and we need typically to at least 6% of oxygen to be able to survive.
Okay.
So it doesn't happen like that. It happens slowly. The pressure is reducing slowly. That's the reason at the beginning they're fine. They just have short breaths, like the same effect you have when you start climbing on the top of a mountain. When you reach 2,000 meters, 3,000, getting worse and worse. When you reach the top of the Mauna Kea, which is I think 5,000 meters, roughly something like this, you do feel it. I've been observations over there. Have you been top of the Mauna Kea?
No, but I grew up in Colorado, and I have been near the top of Mount Evans. And short story, really quickly. I made the mistake of, I was about 9 or 10. We hadn't lived in Colorado for long. I didn't understand altitude yet, and I went running from the car to catch up with my dad. And I made it about 5 feet before I dropped to my knees because I had no oxygen, basically. And everybody just kind of gathered around and went, "Well, that wasn't very bright, was it?" Family is very understanding. Yeah. So yeah, I know what, and you can get sick from that. You can get sick from that alone. Just not having that oxygen will make you physically ill.
Yeah, exactly. Some people have a very bad reaction. When you go on the top of Mauna Kea, they ask you to stay at 3,000 meters to acclimate first, and then you climb. And they say as soon as you start having headache or you start not being able to breathe, you go down quickly because something can happen to you. You can have a bad reaction. There is a name for it, and I should have Googled it, but there is a name for this.
The only thing I've ever known it called is altitude sickness.
I'm sure our brain, the brain's watching us at the moment, is Googling it and is going to correct us. So
yeah, I'm sure they are. But I know what it feels like. I know what that feels like too, because I experienced it when I was in Nevada for field camp for geology, and we were up at altitude a bit, not incredibly high, but high enough that I could not catch my breath, and I was definitely feeling like I had a lot to drink when I hadn't. So it was not a pleasant experience. I would pass on that one. Yeah. So I can imagine Mauna Kea is even worse.
Yes, you cannot do some basic calculation when you're on the top of Mauna Kea. So when you're observing, they ask you to prepare everything in advance, because you, after 2 a.m., being tired and being high like this, you basically lose it and you start having the dumbest idea, so not being able to do anything cognitively intense, like simple calculations like multiplications are becoming challenging. So
and we kind of see this with the crew a bit, where like everything starts to slow down and they're having trouble speaking and they're having trouble.
They speak slowly, and you can see there is a delay between the each sentences, like if they needed more time to process what the person was saying. So you see that happening. So and then Kayla. So you remember what happened with Kayla? She mentioned something about her.
Yeah, she mentions that they dove for abalone, and so she learned to hold her breath for very long periods of time. I think she says 12 to 13 minutes in the show.
10 minutes.
10 minutes? Okay.
Yeah.
So is that possible?
So I did some research, of course, because I love those things. So most humans can hold their breath for something between 30 seconds and 2 minutes. That's the norm, what you can do normally. If you go in your bathtub tonight, you can try. You can hold your breath for 2 minutes, probably 50 seconds. There is something I learned stuff by doing this research. So first I discover, because I have this, urban legend, scientific urban legend, we say that I thought that being young, you could hold your breath longer than being older, but that's not true at all. It has been shown in a scientific paper that that's completely not true. That the capability of holding your breath is just training and is not age relating. So if you the only thing is that if you're old, you have the tendency to smoke more cigarettes, especially in the past. So that's the reason you lose the capability to hold your breath. So 2 minutes, it seems to be a long time, but in fact, the longest time a human being has been holding his breath underwater was 22 minutes and 22 seconds officially. That's the official record. It's a German freediver called Tom Sietas. He did that in 2012. But there is a trick.
Wow. Okay.
He used what we call hyperventilation. So what he did, he breathed some air with more oxygen to prepare his body and cleaning his body of the carbon dioxide. So he already have saturated his body with oxygen, and that's the reason he could hold his breath for 22 minutes.
Okay.
There is other records showing that a normal human being, can dive for Natalia Moljanova from Russia did this. She did a diving, so she was swimming down for 9 minutes and 2 seconds. That's diving. So basically, there is an action, and they cannot use this hyperventilation system first. And then there is another record from Branko Petrovic from Serbia, who did that in 2014. He held his breath for 11 minutes and 54 seconds. So,
wow. So 10 minutes, if it's something that she was having to do regularly for the diving for abalone, not necessarily unreasonable.
Yeah. But you know what? We can brag as human beings, but I look around other species, and sperm whales can do that, can hold their breath for 90 minutes. 90. 1 hour and a half.
Wow.
Yeah.
Much bigger lung capacity.
So I was looking how they can do that. How whales can hold, or other mammals can hold their breath for such a long period of time. But first of all, they are designed for that. They're not designed, they're evolved for that. Okay, so that's normal. We are not, as a human species, we are not made to hold our breath for a long period of time, because it's not something we are supposed to do, right? We live mostly on Earth, on the surface of the planet, so there is no reason for us to be able to hold our breath for 90 minutes like a whale.
Right.
So I discovered that we use 5% of the oxygen that we inhale only. Whales can use 90% of the oxygen. So that means that when a whale starts breathing before diving, it basically can capture way more oxygen into his body that we can do. You know, when we do this hyperventilation before going diving, like breathing multiple times, when a whale does that, because they do that, in fact, they can absorb more oxygen. And then also what they do, they completely empty their lungs after this. Why? Because they want to dive. So what you do in this case, you minimize the amount of air in your body, so you can dive faster. Okay. That's one thing that makes sense. We cannot do. So when you breathe, you capture the oxygen, and the oxygen is captured by what we call hemoglobin, which are in the blood.
Hemoglobin. Okay. Yep. Okay.
And whales have 50% more hemoglobin that we have. So that's one thing. They can capture more of the oxygen that they breathe. And then this hemoglobin is brought to the muscles and stored in the muscles in another type of molecule, which is called myoglobin. I don't know anything about. And the whales have way more of those than us, 30% more than human. So they can carry more oxygen, and they can store more oxygen in the muscles.
Okay.
Because that's the way they evolve. And on the top of that, the body of the whales can adapt to the fact that they are diving. So adapt meaning that they shut down unnecessary part of the body. So they basically shut down the flow of blood in the extremities, which are not moving. We cannot do that. When we dive, we still have bloods going to our fingers. Well, if whales had fingers, they will not have bloods coming to their fingers, for instance. They will just turn it off because it's useless. And then they can also slow down the heart significantly. I don't have the exact number, but I think it's something like 1 or 4 heartbeats per minute.
Wow.
It's like almost nothing. We can reduce our heartbeat as well when we dive, and in fact that's what those professional divers can do, but we cannot do it as slow as a whale. So all of this to say that Kayla could hold her breath for like 8 minutes because she practiced. She trained her body to do that, and she probably trained that when she was very young, and she can do this still as an adult. But this capability is physical. It's true that human can slow their heartbeat, but it's also psychological. Because when you hold your breath, you have also this moment of panic that we all have, because we have the feeling we are going to die. But it's something that you can control, apparently, and most of us cannot. I can. Wow. I must admit, I'm not a very good diver.
I once upon a time I really was. I was pretty good at it. It's been a long time though, so I don't know if I could do it anymore.
So based on this paper, it's never too late to continue to start again the training and be able to do that again.
Cool. Well, that's good to know. One quick correction: it's not Kayla. It's Owo that can do it.
Sorry.
That's okay.
And then do you remember when she takes this the last time she see the crew? They say, you go without us. We're going to stay here. And they couldn't.
Yeah, they all start passing out one at a time, just slumping over and out they go.
So the passing out is not really clear, but it's related to the increase of carbon dioxide in the body. It's basically a way for the body to say, hey, I need more oxygen. I have a lot of poison right now in my body. I cannot continue like this, so you pass out, which is, I don't know, it's a way to kind of minimize the activity, hoping that somewhere, sometimes the oxygen will come back and you will be able to go back to have a normal breathing.
Right. I've seen this in other shows where this kind of thing has happened, where life support has been shut off, and so it's sort of that your body's minimizing all of the other excess functions. So it's like, I'm going to turn you off in the hope that I can turn back on. it's that computer equivalent of, no, this isn't working anymore. We're going to turn off and see if we can turn back on later and work. So it's a human body that you can't turn it on later.
Yes.
So they only have so much time to be passed out, basically.
Yeah, the computers do that sometimes too, you know. Unfortunately, we work sometimes and they stop
way too many times. Yeah. I mean, that's basically what Burnham's having to do, right? She's having to turn the computer off and back on to clear it out and start over. So, yeah. All right.
So for this scene, go ahead. Sorry.
Well, I was going to ask you, did you do any looking into like what they were blowing up, like how they were blowing up? You know, they were sending this explosive over there to sort of disconnect the nacelle, to interrupt their flight through at warp, right? Because they're flying through at warp, and so they were trying to make it stop. So, did you have anything on any of that, or did you just kind of go, "Oh, Star Trek," and move on?
Star Trek, yes.
Okay.
You know me. This was totally Star Trek. We have no idea how this warp drive works. So I will totally let you comment on the fact that a Star Trek spaceship cannot work if it doesn't have the nacelle properly attached to the space.
Well, I think it's like anything where if you disrupt the natural process, like the processes that are built in, it can't run at full speed. So it's one of those, it's running at full speed, we're going to blow this part up, and now it can't, because like that's ruined some connection or something. I still can't find my Science of Star Trek book and the design plans for all the various ships. So I'm not going to nerd out that hard.
I think you should have said the structural integrity of the spaceship.
Yeah, okay, sure. We'll go. Yeah, the structural integrity of the spaceship. There, I said that properly.
But that's
okay, so the crew has to survive their adventures in carbon dioxide poisoning. And now we have. So where do you want to go from there? That was a lot. We've got a crew passed out.
Well, I want to go to the explanation of the burn, because that's the episode we finally have a clear explanation.
That's right, and we've seen it coming for a couple weeks now, or for a couple episodes. We're a bit after when this aired, but we've seen it happening for a couple episodes where we've made it into the Virubin Nebula. We narrowed it down to that. We had a signal. We've gone in. We found the ship crashed on this planet that's has a lot of dilithium in it. And inside we have found a hologram program running to protect a Kelpian. I don't know what their lifespan is, but the implication is that while he is like 100 some odd years old, because that's when the burn happened, it's also very clear that he doesn't seem, and I don't know if it's just how he's been raised by these holograms, but basically he seems very young.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I'm going to say like teenager at best. So we've discovered that when he gets upset, the dilithium starts to destabilize in the planet. And this happens while Booker's ship is out there in the last episode. And Booker notes that, it seemed like the warp core was starting to, the engine was starting to have problems. The dilithium was going unstable. So suddenly we all go, oh, okay, so something happened to him at an early age that basically was so traumatic, he caused the burn himself. And they give us an explanation for why this is possible. So why don't we start with that? How is it that his emotions seem to interact with the dilithium?
So the explanation is not coming from me, it's coming from Culver, the doctor.
Yep.
Mention it briefly to Adira, and from there he says a scientific word which does exist called polybloids.
Polyploidy.
Anyway, this is one of the words that I think I'm gonna skip for the rest of the show, but. The explanation of this is really something that does exist. It's an effect. It's a species which has more than 2 sets of chromosomes. We have 2, as you know.
Right. So humans are diploid, and then anything beyond diploid we call polyploid. So you can have. I think I saw, just kind of glancing, that there were easily triploid, but there's also beyond that, right? So you've found some other stuff. So why don't you explain what you learned?
Well, once again, it's not my field, so I'm just gonna mention what I read. But it's it's an anomaly. It's a genetic anomaly that can happen, but it's also something that can be produced by hybriding species. For instance, if you want to create hybrid plants, what you can do is to add more chromosomes into the plant's set of chromosomes to slightly transform it. And that's the way we did wheat. In fact, wheat is quadriploid or something like that.
Quadriploid, I think is what they, yeah.
It has multiple 4 sets of chromosomes. So that's, and this kind of animals or organism will be different to the father or the mother. And most of the time they are sterile. They cannot reproduce because they will never find a match of their chromosomes to be able to have infants or offspring, whatever you want to call them, depending if it's an organism or a plant or seed, of course. So that's the explanation they have for Sukal. What happened is that when his mother was pregnant, he got a mutation because of the high radiation on the dilithium planet, And we have to find a name for this planet, by the way, because Dilithium planet is not very nice. But one day we will name it. One day we ask the International Astronomical Union to name the Dilithium planet of Star Trek. But,
okay, sure.
but this planet, so when this kind of mutation under different environment does happen. That's why we don't want a pregnant woman to drink alcohol or work in highly radiative environment because of this risk of mutation. And this type of mutation is a possible mutation that can occur. Then we have the Star Trek-y science here. So because of this mutation, this mutant gene, Su'Kal is capable of interacting directly with the dilithium.
Right.
And the way it interacts with the dilithium is by shouting, apparently.
Right. It's a sonic interaction. It's not an emotional interaction. It's a sonic one. And his voice apparently vibrates at the right wavelength to destabilize the dilithium.
So when we see the scene when basically the burn happened, we see him screaming because there is a video of that, and you can see that after he screamed, the entire planet gets the wave of his sound, and then he went through, and that's why the Adira explanation. Adira explained that because the dilithium connect directly through subspace, that vibration went through the subspace, and through the subspace, which every spacecraft with dilithium in the galaxy
is connected to.
They're all connected, and
that explains why we find that so many subspace communication stations are burned out. This also gives that explanation. So we've now discovered that it's a genetic mutation, and it's a sonic interaction between his voice at a particular wavelength and the wavelength that can now damage the dilithium, because we see this with different kinds of radiation here on Earth, right? You start to get into smaller, finer radiation like X-rays and gamma rays, and the frequency is small enough that it can actually get in and vibrate cells and vibrate atoms and cause problems, right? I mean, that's, as I always explained to my students, think of the Hulk. The Hulk suffered from gamma radiation, and I know I just changed franchises, but that's how I always explained it. You know, if you want to remember what end is the part that you want to worry about, it's the smaller ones, because that's where we see these issues. So here we're saying that this is a sonic vibration that has done a similar effect, basically.
Yeah.
And it was able to travel because of subspace. So all in all, a really cool explanation for how it worked. I'm glad that it didn't come out to be like some weird psychic thing, and that they actually had a physical explanation for it. I prefer physical I'm a scientist. I prefer physical explanations. But this does lead into a different topic, where we have a somewhat not physical explanation for how something worked on the show, and that's Booker being able to use the spore drive, right? Which I know you didn't totally want to talk about, but I'm going to throw it in here. So at the end, Booker's the one that has to get Discovery out, right? They're trapped inside the Emerald Chain ship. Osira's dead, and now they need to get out, and they're going to dump the warp core, so they obviously can't use that. So all that they're left with is the spore drive. How convenient. Okay, so they don't have Stamets. Stamets is the one that can operate the spore drive, and they kicked him out so that they couldn't steal Stamets as well.
Let's be correct here. They did not kick them out. Michael kicked him out.
Michael literally kicked him out. She shoved him out an airlock. Let's be honest. Okay, so I mean, he was safe and everything, but still, she shoved him out an airlock. So, but they figured out that. So the scientist has now changed, the Emerald Chain's Osiris pet scientist Aurelio has now changed sides, because, I mean, one, Osiris dead, so may as well, and two, she wasn't going to take care of him, so he's had a change of conscience, I guess. And so he said that because of Booker's empathy with other species and the way that he can interact with them, he doesn't need the tardigrade DNA that Stamets had to have to interact with the mycelium network and tell it where he wants to go. So they're now relying on Booker. And again, this is one of those, okay, we still haven't really figured out this empathy thing, but we're just gonna roll with it, I guess. And so Booker actually manages to make the ship move. And of course, it's definitely that I'm always reminded of Galaxy Quest of, oh, it had to stop at 1 second left. That's how it always works in the show. So it's that same feeling, like it's going to explode and they just make it out in time. Like you can't have any leeway, heaven forbid. So, but I know that's one of those things where you were like, I don't want to talk about it. So I've done the talking about it for you.
No, it's good you talk about it for me. I do like the scene, since you mentioned it, when Ozara finally revealed a true nature to the scientist by telling him, I saved you just because you are useful to me.
Yeah.
Something
I mean,
like
that really was, I was like, yeah, well, everybody else knew that about her. I guess it's time you got to learn it.
Yeah, it's interesting how suddenly you realize, yeah, she was not a friend. She'd never been a friend. She was basically using him. And
I think not to, again, it comes back to scientists have to sometimes be careful who they, what they work on and what they work for. If you, and we've seen this in a lot of different things where, you work on a project because you're excited and it's interesting and you have no idea that at the end of it, there's something there that maybe you don't want to find. Now, the examples we see in TV and movies are obviously very extreme examples, but that's not to say that, if you work for various corporations, you might be helping do things that at the end of the day, you didn't know you were helping do.
So one example is those scientists who were working for oil and gas company in the 70s and 80s and who wrote papers claiming that carbon dioxide has to go somewhere and it will go in the atmosphere and this will have an impact on our planet. Those papers now come out because the gas and oil company are releasing them or there is some leaks, but they knew about it. And despite this, there still work for them for decades. So the scientific conscious can change the world as well.
Yeah, exactly. So, okay, I know that you had one other thing you wanted to talk about, so I'm gonna. I think we've dived in
plenty of things.
Well, there were lots of things, but we wanted to talk about. Osira mentioned having 6 valves in her heart.
Yes, that was interesting. I tried to understand that. And once again, it's biology. So I think we should invite a doctor to come to this show next time to tell us everything about the valves. So we
need a biologist for this show. Yeah.
Human has a heart made of 4 valves. And I look at the name of them. And I'm glad I'm not a medical student because remembering those names take me a while.
I only remember mitral because I've dealt with it.
Yes. There is tricuspid, pulmonary, mitral.
Pulmonary. Okay, but mitral. Aortic. And aortic. Okay. I know 3 of them. Okay, when you mentioned 3 of them, I remember them. The first one I didn't know.
So the thing I tried to find is whether or not on Earth we have a species with more than 4 valves. And in my 1-hour search, I did not find any. I found some anomaly in the heart called heart conditions for which we have 2 valves got together and so on, but I never found a species with 6 valves. So when she says we have 6 valves and the blood flow in all directions, I have no idea what she meant because I don't have any example to describe to you, unfortunately.
Yeah, and I don't know the probability on that one either. The only thing I can speak to is that I know of a congenital defect of the heart where sometimes, so it's not just, you have the 4 valves and you also have a lot of incoming veins. And sometimes they can connect to the wrong spot. So you get increased blood flow through one of the chambers of the heart that you shouldn't have. And that can cause some problems depending on how severe those are. So I'm not sure how blood flowing in all directions is possible or makes things better. But again, not a biologist.
Yes.
Definitely,
But
definitely not a
I
cardiologist.
will love a biologist here who is watching the show to tell us what will happen if you have 6 valves. So
Yeah.
that's maybe the heart with 3 cavities and
Yeah, I would imagine it'd be like
vein,
it'd be
arteries, and
chambers,
something
right?
else. It's going to be very complex.
Yeah.
I would have understand 8 because then there will be 2 network of
Right.
arteries, 2 veins completely separated, for instance. But 6, it's kind of weird.
Yeah, I'm not sure about that one. And it's yeah, we've touched on it. If there's a biologist in our audience who wants to come on and explain or write a long explanation in our comments, we are more than welcome to listen to you. Like I would love it, because Franck and our biology is basically whatever the internet says that we can find in a reasonable amount of time. And sometimes what I can beg off of my husband, who was pre-med and kind of has some of this stuff still in his head, but not to that extent.
Yeah.
He's been working in computers too long. His biology is a little. So
And then there is the moment, I like the moment where we see the dilithium planet. That's the first time we see the surface of this planet.
Right, because we've just been in this hologram the whole time.
Maybe you can mention that the reason we finally see it is before they turn off the hologram is because Gray appear in the holodeck, which is kind of cool.
Gray really exists and isn't just in her head. Like, that was kind of cool because, it's like, oh, well, the hologram recognizes that Gray is here. So it's like, we're going to be exploring that in future episodes, I'm sure.
Yeah.
So that was really cool. And then it turns out that, of course, Gray's the only one who can go through the holograph walls out into where it's not protected anymore. So he can get out of the holodeck and see what's going on behind that, because the radiation isn't going to affect a non-corporeal being, right? He doesn't actually exist on this plane somehow. So he goes out and sees that the planet is basically, the ship is falling apart and the spot where it's parked on the planet is not stable and it's going to come down and they need to get out quickly. And so we finally get a look at this very broken surface, right? I mean, that was...
It looks like, and that's the reason I wanted to mention it, if you look at the picture of the Psyche mission made by artists,
right,
Psyche is the mission that will explore an asteroid made of metal.
Which we think is the exposed core of a protoplanet or a planet that got pulled apart by Jupiter. We don't know.
Well, those artists have the same kind of structure on the planet, on the asteroid. This kind of V-shape, very extreme peak mountains coming out of the surface. So we have that in the Psyche artistic illustrations, and that's what they have also for the dilithium planet. So I think something happened here. Someone got the image and they kind of created this metallic world based on the Psyche pictures.
Yeah, we are going to have a guest on a special episode, so that leads me into that. We're actually going to we've invited, and she has accepted, Dr. Erin McDonald, who is the science advisor on Star Trek, like for all of the franchises right now. So we're going to have her on a special episode that we'll be taping soon, and we can ask her that, like, where the idea for the dilithium planet came from, because I think she can answer a lot of the questions now. Unfortunately, we didn't have her on earlier because NDAs are really hard to get around, and you don't mess with Star Trek NDAs. But I think she can come answer that one. That's a good. Make a note of that one, Franck. We're going to ask Erin that.
Okay, well, that's it for me in terms of the science for this show. We can talk about what happened with the Federation, what happened with Saru, and so we can go ahead.
Yeah, so okay, let's wrap it up then. So the way the finale shakes out, Osira is dead. The Emerald Chain is basically broken without their leader. Saru takes Su'Kal back to Kaminar to sort of finish up with his mother's last wishes, which were basically to meet his grandfather and to watch this meteor shower. And that was really sweet. The two of them sitting on the hillside watching the meteors go overhead, although that was definitely a bit wilder than any meteor shower I've experienced.
And it was not scientifically correct.
No.
Because when you look at the meteor shower, remember, it's coming from the same virtual point in the sky. So if you are looking at a meteor shower, it would be like when you're driving and it's raining and or it's snowing and you see the snowflakes coming to a point. So that's the way a meteor shower looks like. They don't fly right and left in random direction like we saw in the show. But that's okay.
It was very pretty. No, it was very pretty, and I'm going to leave it at that. We already ruined the science. Okay, so they're doing that thing, and Saru has to take some time to figure out what he wants to do now, because this is kind of a big deal right now. And the Federation has now figured out how to mine the dilithium from this planet, which I'm like, well, really? Because it was very full of radiation and everything was kind of miserable, but you've already established in your limited capabilities how to mine the dilithium. Okay. Sure. We'll go with that. And again, Star Trek. So now everybody's all happy because dilithium can be found again. I'm not sure how much dilithium, and nobody really mentioned, I don't remember, nobody really mentioned the spore drive at the end either, and the fact that, you have now a planet of, a group of empaths that could possibly help you out here. And if there are other empaths, maybe that could work. So we might see some more of that in the future. And then the Admiral promotes Burnham to captain and basically says, I need an answer. And we don't, it's like, end scene. So, she accepts, and I honestly thought we were going to be left with a cliffhanger. Like we were going to be like end the season with, I need your answer now. And that was going to be it. So I was really happy when they were actually like, okay. So she shows up on the bridge and everybody's happy that she's captain, and she has her catch line of let's fly. And I noticed that they gave her a tagline there. So that was kind of cute. Like we just sort of solved it right off. And Booker's with her. Like he's still on the ship, still part of the crew. So everybody was back, and they were talking about, it was really tied up in a nice little neat bow, wasn't it? Like people are rejoining the Federation left and right, and we're figuring out how to bring everybody back together, and yay, isn't it happy? So I feel like this is the most hopeful note we've ended on in a season so far in this whole show.
Yeah, the end is extremely positive, and I mean, it feels good somehow to have such a positive ending.
The best part was the guy that Burnham brought into the Federation that was at the station, remember? And she was the only officer he'd seen in forever. So she brought him into the Federation, and there he was, and now he's a lieutenant, and he's got his new uniform, and that was kind of, I liked that. It was like, wow, that was a nice tie over from the very opening. So that was really cool. And then they all have their new uniforms too. So they're all in new Starfleet uniforms. So we're changing out of the old Discovery blues and into the gray with the stripes. And I'm already sitting here trying to figure out what every stripe means and what different patterns there are. So
people have done that already.
I'm sure other people have done it. Yeah.
The 4 stars.
I'll have to get new shirts and stuff. It's more reason to buy Star Trek swag. So I'll be good.
So it's over.
So, yeah, it's over.
The next season maybe in a year?
Probably, with everything having to be shut down for production, and all the timing is off because of the pandemic. I mean, that's the reality. So I'm pretty sure it's... I don't know. What do you want to do? Okay, I'm going to ask the camera. Everybody out there, what do you want us to do? I know you guys are enjoying The Expanse, but I have to binge that to catch up. So, and The Expanse is over too, right? Because you guys just wrapped up The Expanse. So, yeah, give us your suggestions of what you want us to do. Franck has suggested maybe a rewatch of Babylon 5, which
That
is
was a
now
joke. That was a joke.
that was a joke. Hey, someone might take you up on that. I'm actually watching it. It's been remastered into 720p, and just to give that a little push, it's up on HBO Max for those of you who have it. And I've already started watching it because I didn't have TV in the mid 90s, so I missed some stuff. And the other thing I'm probably going to do is I'm going to go back and watch Deep Space Nine and Voyager because I didn't really get to see those either. I know, but I didn't.
Aye.
So, I mean, we could do some more Star Trek. We could do some old Trek. We could do movies. So, guys, let us know in the comments what you want to see, and we'll get Margaret to do some stuff too because I know that she's going to miss The Expanse as well. So,
Yeah, I think doing some movies would be great. Yesterday, I watched again Elysium, for instance, and that would be a good science fiction movie to talk about. But
did I
let's
see that
let's
one?
put together a list of new
Yeah.
movies coming in 2021. I heard there will be a lot of movies this year, since there was no many in 2020, and talk about those.
Yeah,
Let us know.
and let us know in the comments, guys. Like now is the time to make some comments about what you want to see on the show, and we'll see what we can do. All right, so I think that wraps it up for the season for us. I'm going to have to modify my little closing tag because we will not be back next week. Well, we will. We just have to make the schedule happen, and we'll figure that one out. So, this has been the Grudge Report. We're really glad you all have stuck around for the seasons, both of this and The Expanse. Make sure you subscribe and ring the bell for notifications for when we come back with our special episode, and when we come back with whatever new things we're gonna do. And thanks for watching, everyone. This has been a lot of fun. Thank you, Franck.
Bye bye, Beth. Let's fly.
Bye. Let's fly.